what is an appraisal? An appraisal is an opinion of value developed by a licensed or certified professional. You're licensed through the state, in this case the state of Texas, and we follow guidelines from USPAP, which is Uniform Standards of a Professional Appraisal Practice. And it's kind of like if you're an accountant, you follow GAAP. If you're a lawyer, you follow certain laws. We have to follow guidelines, and our customer is typically for a real estate transaction is the lender, and they provide us with a scope of what they are looking for and what the appraisal will be used for, and based on that, we start to develop an opinion of value. So 10 different opinions of values will come from 10 different appraisers. So it's an opinion of value. It's not scientific, it's more scientific and art. That's why it's individualized to a specific property and a specific time, date and time. It could be the day I inspected the property, or it could be a retrospective day in the past that they wanted to know the value for. So the factors that affected the appraisal, as you know, basic things like quality of the home, the condition of the home, but number one, of course, is location. The amenities of the property, inside and out, meaning does it back to a golf course? Does it have a view of a lake? Does it have a view of or is the major highway running right behind it? Or is there a train tracks running behind it? So there's a lot of factors.
Hey, I have a question about that. What about power lines? Would you consider that to be a contributor or a detractor of value?
It could be. The big power lines, the big metal ones, those for sure.
Yeah.
How it affects value is I have to go find a comparable that has that same. Okay, so if I can find 3 or 4 comparables that have that same, those are my comparables because they have that same influence.
Okay.
So, and if those comparables are comparables, I mean they're similar size, similar conditions, similar quality, and if they're not, there's adjustments that are made for each one of those items.
So that's actually, I wrote down here, I was going to ask you, how do you select comparable properties? And I think you just answered that.
Location is the number one.
Location.
So,
what about the age of the home?
The age of the home also. I mean,
okay.
That's a part of it. Age, location, the view, the amenities of the neighborhood.
Okay.
The size of the lot.
Yeah.
The size of the gross living area of the home. So those are the factors that are.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting because I get a lot of questions about that, and as we do as realtors. So that helps me a lot to give good answers to my clients and to hopefully help people understand better what an appraisal is and what it looks at. What's the difference between a tax appraisal and an opinion of value, which you said is what the official definition is right, of an appraisal?
Appraisal, we base our appraisal based on current market conditions, current recent sales.
Okay.
We go into the home and we inspect the home and we see the condition, the quality, we make notes of all those things. And a tax appraisal they do it en masse. So it's statistical.
Okay.
And it's applied to groups of homes.
Yes.
And it isn't individualized. It's done once a year, on the same day of the year, I believe.
Yeah.
First of the year. And so we'll be doing an appraisal in late September or early spring. There's a difference on market activity. The more homes may have sold, more homes sell during the first part of the year in Texas, or in this Houston area, versus like after July 4th, all of a sudden it might slow down in past years. But that might be different now that we've had the coronavirus, and I call the coronavirus pent up demand.
Yeah.
We're seeing a pretty active market right now.
Yeah.
So
you take that into consideration when you're appraising the home, where the tax is not necessarily looking at all that.
They don't have access to the home.
They don't have, in Texas, we're a non-disclosure state, meaning when it comes to the sales price of our homes, they're not recorded in the public record. Only the liens are recorded. So that's a good thing for people to understand too. And not to switch to another topic, but what do you think of Zillow market values when they give. I got a client the other day, house for sale for 740. She says, but Zillow says it's 600.
Yeah, that's.
Ugh.
I mean, it's the same thing. Okay, so the appraisal
Yeah.
is the gold standard. Then there's other forms or other tools to use to come up with a value, right?
Yeah.
So they're using data that they're collecting.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's automated. It's collecting data. They don't supposed to have access to HAR.
Right. So they don't have access to the sales prices.
The actual real sales
Real
price.
sales prices.
So they'll give a range.
Yeah.
And typically I find that range is incorrect. It probably is
Yeah.
low more times
okay.
than not, that I
Okay.
can see.
Okay. And I bet if you read in the tiny print on Zillow's website, you will see that they don't guarantee the values, and they say they're, I think their range that they consider to be within realistic value is like 5%
Yeah.
of all the homes that they do.
It's a
So,
range. So we
it's just
come
so
up-
hard because people do rely on them a lot of times. They look at them as an authority in value.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they have something. Okay, so they.
Yeah.
For Zillow, I've never seen it where Zillow was higher than.
Really?
Or the lower, or it's always been lower.
Then-
But for
then
a
you
tax
feel like
appraisal,
it's later,
the tax appraisal goes either way because.
Yeah.
Let's say you bought a home, and you start when your home first gets a tax. There's the lot value, so it's taxed there. Then once
Right,
you built the home, it's taxed on the whole value of the home with the improvements.
Right.
And then they can only go up a certain amount per year,
And that's controlled usually by the state law.
However they-
The legislature, yeah, they pass certain
and
regulations.
It can only go up a certain
How much you
amount.
go up, yeah.
It's people can fight it and get it to go lower, and
Yeah.
typically are trying to keep it lower. So that's usually lower, but also, I mean, I've seen it to where it's higher than what the real value is, and then that's when
And we're still talking about Zillow here.
No, we're talking
No.
about the tax. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry, the tax, okay.
And so this is different. So Zillow always is usually lower, but the tax can be higher or lower.
Yes.
And when you see that,
Yes.
you might be able to protest because they've been taxing you for more than what you should have been taxed, according to what I think. So but the thing is, when I write my appraisal, it's for the lender or for the client. Then you could be the client trying to protest the tax, and you want an opinion. So I'll give you my opinion, but it isn't going to be based on what you want it to be.
Yeah.
You might be disappointed.
Sure.
I might say, so I might show that it is worth more. I mean,
Yeah.
but if I was gonna not be an appraiser and just be a real estate agent or just say, well, here's some comparables you can take to them that you can
Yes.
try to get to protest
Yes.
it, but you do a whole appraisal,
Yeah.
you might be disappointed in the results. It can't be based on what you want. It's what data I get.
Okay. What are some of the things that affects the appraised value of a home?
Okay.
So we have A, House B, same floor plan, same builder. What would separate them from in value it?
Well, there's some factors that you can affect, and there's some that you can't. So you
Okay.
can't affect where it is, the location. You can't.
So that
affect-
value same for both?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can't affect it. It is what it is. You can't affect condition, quality, or updates, upgrades, landscaping, things like that. You can't affect that, but you can't affect the site size, the size of the home. You can change, but usually it's not worth it to try to change.
Doesn't have the value, you're
No,
saying?
it doesn't have the value. It's not dollar for dollar.
Not for dollar.
There's some things that are dollar for dollar, and then there's some things that you can look that up. It's interior paint, carpet, replacing the carpet, flooring, updating the kitchen, or the bathrooms to a certain degree. If you overdo something, it's not going to return you, the value. Your value will diminish
Right.
as it gets.
Right. How about even like a new roof? Because I know sometimes clients say, well, I just spent $15,000 on a new roof. Why can't I ask $15,000 more for my house? And I try to explain that. For me as a realtor, I look at it more as a maintenance item. That yes, the age of the roof counts in the appraisal or the condition of the roof, but at the same time,
It's gonna provide something, right?
but not necessarily dollar for dollar.
When we do an appraisal, we're looking to see, is there a roof?
Oh, okay.
Is it
there
working?
Is
there
it
a
working
big
as
hole?
it should? Yeah.
Is there leaks? Is it that's what we're.
Okay. Is it functioning as intended?
Mhm.
That's a lot of times what these things say.
If we know that it's going to be replaced, it's working, but it's not. So we might be looking for other homes that, comparable wise, we might be looking for other homes that have updates, such as a replaced roof.
Okay.
So if they have updates, it's the overall condition of the property.
And you would consider that in the appraisal with the what the updates were. But suppose you don't know. What
Let's just say
happens?
there's no updates, but the roof has been replaced.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's not going to be data that's going to tell me what kind of adjustment I should make for that.
Right.
Okay. It's a roof that works, and it doesn't look like it's falling apart. It looks, it is aged, but the other comparables are most likely going to have the same age roof. Okay. So when we're looking at the data, which is the comparables, we're looking for similarities. Okay. So we try to get them first by the location, then the size of the home, the size of the lot, the amenities of the lot. We try to get those kind of things.
Okay.
First,
When you say the amenities of the lot, tell me about pools and how an appraiser looks at a house which has a pool and doesn't have a pool. Because sometimes people ask me, well, is it, and a lot of people will say this, isn't it true that you don't get the value back? When you build a pool on your house, you're not going to get the same amount back. And so when you buy the house, it's better to buy a house with a pool.
The same as when you buy a car and you drive it off the lot, it depreciates.
Yes, right.
So if you're gonna put a pool in, you're not putting it in to make money. You're putting it in to use it.
To use it and enjoy it.
And then at the end of the day, when it's time to sell, the comparables that I choose are mostly going to have pools. But if there's a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of pools, and I'll have to find at least one that has a pool, and then I'll have to make that adjustment for the comparables that don't, right? So, and it's called match pair analysis. When you compare two sales, it doesn't have to be the subject. It can be, you're looking at the actual data, the comps. Two sales that are same except for the pool, trying to find X. So no house is going to have exactly the same square footage, but they're going to have, maybe they'll be within 100, and that's no adjustment at all. Okay. Maybe they're going to have the same size.
Because that can even be in how it was originally measured, or who measured it, right? It can be off of.
It's going to be different. Every appraiser is going to have a different number for gross living area. So, which is square footage. You call it square footage. We call it gross living area.
Okay.
It does not include the garage, or does not include covered patios. It does not include separate buildings outside. Over the garage, bonus rooms over the garage.
Oh, really?
Not if you can't access it from the interior. So the gross living area.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay.
Yeah. A lot of times real estate agents will include that.
Yes, and they try to make it.
And now all of a sudden, when we're doing the appraisal, we're going to compare with the gross living area. We're going to find other homes with gross living areas, and hopefully they have in a garage apartment. But if they don't, there'll be an adjustment for that. But going back to the pool thing, so depreciation happens. So if you pay $70,000 for a pool, you're not going to get $70,000 on appraisal, because most of the time we're going to use comps that have pools that are similar. Like if you overdo a pool, you're only going to get so much back for it. But so you're going to use that pool. At the end of the day, it will add value, but not dollar for dollar for sure, because we're going to be doing a match pair, and we'll determine what that pool is adding for value in that neighborhood. And then that will be our adjustment. So explaining adjustments though, just so you guys look at things linear as far as real estate agents. On hard, it goes across like this. Well, we look at it like that, and then we put it in a grid. And so now we're looking at, here's this site size, here's this site size for each comp. And we're determining an adjustment for the differences between from that comp to ourselves. I mean, differences in quality, differences in condition. If there are any, we're trying not to have adjustments. If it has an amenity like a pool or an outbuilding, or guest quarters above a garage, things like that.
Oh, Here's a good question. What happens when, okay, I'm a realtor, right? I have a buyer who's buying a house, and his lender hires an appraiser, and the guy goes out and appraises the house, and it comes out lower than our offer price. And the bank says, or determining, depending on what kind of loan he has, they say, we're not going to lend you any more money. What happens? What do we do?
Okay, so.
What can buyers, sellers,
Okay,
realtors do?
Here's the thing.
Okay, I know, you love
As a
these
real
questions.
estate agent
Yeah,
that represents a buyer,
yes,
you know you're gonna have to, if you can't change, because you can't change, you aren't gonna fight for the seller's appraised value as a
Right.
buyer's agent, okay? But as a listing agent, you are gonna fight for it. So
Mhm.
here's what you would do, okay? As a buyer, a lot of times, there'd be times when buyers don't care. FHA buyers are desperate sometimes to get the property. So they'll bid on the price.
bid on the,
Okay,
right,
so
I've
it's
had that happen.
artificially, that's why you need an appraisal, to make sure that the value, you're not paying more than what it's worth, and the prices aren't being artificially inflated. So like in this case, most of the time, FHA buyers are going to go over list price.
And the problem
And
with
try
that
to
is,
try to compete with a conventional buyer, which is more desirable because they're putting more money down, they're more qualified, it's more likely that they're gonna close. An FHA appraisal versus a conventional appraisal. An FHA home appraisal the home has to qualify, so it has to be livable. It has to, nothing can be broken, like it goes from HVAC, air conditioning, plumbing, electrical.
stove,
The siding is
appliances.
missing, the siding is
oh,
dry rotted.
okay,
There's a ton of things that we have to check for, and
For FHA.
For FHA versus
Okay.
conventional. That's why you might steer your clients toward conventional versus
Right,
FHA.
right.
Even if the FHA is asking to give you more money, to give you more for the value.
right, and the problem is, why is somebody taking out an FHA loan is because they probably don't have a lot of cash. I have to explain this sometimes to my sellers when we get multiple offers, is, listen, if they're using an FHA loan, and doing the 3.5% down payment, they probably don't have the cash to do more down payment. So then coming in at a higher price is mute, because if they don't get approved for that higher price,
If the property doesn't appraise.
not approved, right, you're right, that's the right terminology. If the property doesn't appraise, the lender's not going to give them more money for the sales price. They're only going to give them the money for the appraised, up to the appraised value.
Whichever's lower.
Whichever's lower, yeah.
So, as a listing agent, okay, you get, and I've had this happen. I'm also a real estate agent, so I've fought a couple of appraisals, at least two, and so I've had success.
Oh, you have, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
Yes, because I already know how to think like an appraiser. So I'm gonna try to give you this now. Okay, so it comes back low, and your seller is going to be upset. But your job as a listing agent this is why they hired you, they picked you, is to see if you can do something about that. See if you can affect the value. And how you would do that is, you got to think like an appraiser. And through this video, some of the things that I'll tell you right now, might help you out. So, first of all, you don't want to throw a bunch of things at an appraiser, because if you do that, you're not trying to make a point. You're not speaking
Okay,
his language.
so we should look for something specific.
Specific things.
in
You
the
must
appraisal.
read the appraisal. Okay?
Yes,
Appraisal
I've done that.
Appraisal is more than just an opinion of value. It has a lot of areas in it that you might think that you can affect, like the adjustments I made for a pool.
Right,
If you knew how to do it, you can do a match pair and show them, here's a match pair showing the pool's worth this much. Or you missed the adjustment that this comparable you have, there's no adjustment, it doesn't have a garage, and
okay,
our property does. So there's no adjustment there.
okay.
Things like that, you'll be able to, if you read the whole appraisal and understand what they decided their opinion was, and if you disagree with it, the comparables themselves. the same as if you go protest an appraisal, and they have to show you what
For the taxes,
what
taxes.
comps they used.
Yes.
If you can disqualify a comp based on whatever reasoning, a standard reason, then you might be able to change the value. So in this case, you're probably not gonna get the appraiser to drop a comp out of the appraisal, but you might get them to put less value on opinion on that, what I wanna say is, the weight given to that comparable is less, you know? So you're giving less weight to this comparable because it doesn't affect the value as much as these other comparables. So what you can do is provide comparables that were missing, that weren't in there. Okay. If there's a comparable outside of the actual subdivision but real close by, because there might be limited data and there's not enough comparables in the subdivision.
Yeah.
And you went outside the subdivision, but you know that in this neighborhood over here, homes typically sell for less than in your neighborhood. And then you gotta know how to go prove it.
Okay.
You know, by showing them specific data and specifically saying to this point, and then you might be able to affect the value. So it's called a request of reconsideration of value. Okay. So you request it to the lender and provide the data that you want to submit with it, and then that goes to the appraiser, and then they review it and then decide whether or not
to change
the appraisal, to change the value. They might need to change the appraisal, but the value stays the same based on, the regulations and things like that. And growing up through the appraisal process, or with being mentored and all that stuff, it was appraisers prefer not to change the value because it's less risky.
Yeah.
They saying that they made a mistake or something like that.
Right.
So you have to give them a good reason to change the value.
That makes perfect sense.
So you gotta know what buttons to push.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll come to you and ask you, and I have many times. We work in the same office, and when I've had issues with appraisals,
I've helped. You can always call me.
Yeah.
And ask questions, and
I really appreciate
a lot of the times the questions are going to be the same as what you just asked me. What about a pool?
Right.
Right. Why isn't price per square foot? Why?
Why is it so different?
Yeah.
It's like, and you always say realtors are always looking at price per square foot, but that's not actually what you are considering.
Yeah, and on price per square foot, one reason why is like the condition, quality, the lot size are not all considered in price per square foot. Now, if you are building new construction houses and they're all pretty much the same, price per square foot is going to help you as a realtor be pretty accurate.
Yes.
But as you know, if it's an inverse effect as far as what square footage and the price per square foot are inverted. So if the square footage goes up, the price per square foot goes down. And that's just how it works. So that's why you're trying to compare like properties with similar square footages.
Yeah.
But if you might see on the appraisal report, why did he use this comp?
Yeah.
Well, because the lender is requiring me to use a comp that brackets the size of the lot.
Okay.
It might not have the best house.
Do lenders have different requirements?
They are similar.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just ask for a little bit more. So
okay.
There's a baseline, and then I want to add this much to it. Because what they're doing is selling the loan to a mortgage-backed security. They're selling it on the private market.
That's true. They're creating a product,
so
a mortgage.
They're trying to show that we did a good loan here. Here's the appraisal. The appraisal was done to these standards. The underwriter reviewed it, made sure it check marked everything that on the requirements. So that they can sell the loan.
That's a really good point, because we tend to just look at things and maybe the value from our own perspective and not from, what's going to happen with this loan or the asset of the loan, and what people are going to be looking at. So that's important as well. But it's not something we really have a lot of control over. When we, it's when we use a lender, we think, we don't realize that sometimes they do have different.
They do, and all of those requirements under the new laws from 2008, from the financial, the meltdown we had in real estate, what was happening back then
Yes.
as far as
Like, please explain.
appraisals they're all coming in, you know, and there was pressure from the loan officer, you know, if you don't get it, if you start having too many appraisals that don't make value, they're not going to send you the order,
the business anymore.
And so there was a lot of things that happened, and along all the way up the line that caused that meltdown from appraising all the way up to the Wall Street doing what they did.
Yeah. On the so what's the difference now when an appraiser from, let's say, 2008 to the early 2000s to today? What has changed? That let's say legally, what you can do and can't, or the structure of how a lender hires appraisers, things like that.
That's exactly, they affected that as far as they wanted to make it where there's no influence. Okay. A lot of times real estate agents but have this false idea that they're not supposed to talk to the appraiser about anything. What they're not supposed to talk about is really what the value is, because we can't talk about it because we're not done with the appraisal. We don't know, so we can't really speak to the value unless we've done or have all the data to make that determination. However, what was your question? I'm sorry. So, where was I going with this?
I was saying the difference. What changed?
Okay, the difference is they added what's called an appraisal management company to be that in between you and the lender. So they're the ones that receive the order, distribute it to their list of appraisers that are approved on their list, and then when the appraiser sends it back, they review it before it goes to the lender. If there is a request of a reconsideration of value sent, it will go through the appraisal management company to the appraiser, not from the lender.
So there's no direct, they can't say, I want Rigo to come do an appraisal.
No, they can't do that.
They can't do that anymore.
I know I get loans from Loan Depot or whatever, and they've got to deal with the builder, and we're on the rotation of appraisers. So you can have a rotation of appraisers that you've chosen to be on your appraisal panel. That way you can, you know, most of them that you've worked with before, and you might even be able to say, as an appraisal man, or the person deciding who you want to do the appraisal out of this group of people. But if you start using one person too much, or you know, different things like that, so they just want us to be independent and as much as possible.
Yes.
And then there's a bunch of rules that came out.
That changed.
Right. Lenders started actually doing. See, a lender that just wants a value to come in, and they're not doing any favors to their company by doing that. So now that this is the case, we feel a little bit less pressured. The values don't have to come in. If they don't come in, oh well. As long as it's not like we're not making mistakes on that, as far as they're showing us that we're wrong. Why didn't you use this comp, you know, and giving us real information.
So when you were directly hired before, you were under more pressure to meet the expectations, let's say, of a lender. And I guess what we need to explain too is this is how a lot of bad loans got made to people who could not afford the loans, and they were and the properties were overvalued. And so when the prices started to go down, all of a sudden people had more in their loan than their house was worth. And that's where we saw foreclosures and short
it's
sales.
going to happen. I mean, but if you've inflated the value in the first place, it's just going to make it worse. So, you know, and we respect the fact that a buyer and a seller decided to agree on a price. But in the case like an FHA buyer competing with a bunch of conventional buyers, you know, we have to keep, you know, so we know that that's happening. So if it sells for over list price, that doesn't mean it's not going to make value. It just means, you know,
the risk.
There's a risk that it will, but it doesn't mean that. I mean, it might be the case.
Okay.
Right now, we're going through tremendous market activity. Market values are going up.
Yes.
And so, along with location, quality, condition, size of the home, there's one other little factor that can be thought of, or you know, if appraisal comes back and there's no, what's called a time adjustment. Okay, so a time adjustment is,
Interesting.
let's say appraisal, the comparable sold 3 months ago or 6 months ago,
Yes.
and we're in a market that actually
Like now.
values are going up,
Yeah,
multiple
every month.
offers.
Mhm.
We're seeing in the listings multiple offers. We're hearing from the real estate agents multiple offers, so we know
Right.
the market is moving. Okay,
Right.
we're getting a bunch of orders. Everybody's talking, so
Yeah.
we see it.
So you take that into consideration too?
There's a time when all of a sudden we do start doing that. Meaning me and my peers.
Okay.
We don't all get together and say, you know, we just eventually, we have no choice. The values that we're coming up with historical data without time adjustments is not making the value, but we're hearing that this market is active, there's multiple offers, so we have to consider that. So what we do is we go in and we run statistics or whatever on what is the market moving per month. And then
You showed me that once, I remember
and
doing that.
that adjustment will go there. It might be moving down. And
Yeah.
there's very
Yeah.
rare times when we don't want to do market time adjustments
Yeah.
as appraisers.
Sure.
So when we start doing them, I mean, that means that it's been going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but it might be going down also. So, I mean, I remember the time when everything was making value because the market was going down and the comparables that sold were historical, and so you know what I'm saying.
And they
so,
were higher.
Yeah,
Right.
so you start
in the
seeing
market.
that, and there actually
Yes.
should probably be a time adjustment for the negative.
Just to the negative. Oh
So
my gosh.
we
Yeah.
we determine what it is per month and we apply it.
Okay.
So then that's how we kind of keep up with appreciation and depreciation.
Yeah. And that's an important issue right now.
Yeah. So
Appreciation. Is there anything else you can think of that you might want to share? That would
I'm
be
sure.
important for the consumer, buyers, sellers, agents, us agents.
Oh yeah, as agents, you know, another thing, as a listing agent, before the appraisal is actually done, a lot of agents are providing what's an appraisal package. They call it appraisal package, and in which they provide things like the contract, comparables that they think are comparables, or different information about the comparables. They might say this is a divorce and they sold it cheap, or has a bad floor plan. We know we're gonna have to go outside the subdivision for comparables, that subdivision over here sells for less. And there's ways to determine that.
Okay.
As a real estate agent, you can do like, you know, what are the average over here, what's the average over here?
Yeah.
And
Right.
if there's a difference.
Right.
So you can see that. Or if you just know that, because you're on the ground, as a real estate agent, you're on the ground, you know more than we do. I cover a lot of area. I don't live in those areas. I'm a real estate agent. I might not have sold in those areas, but I've done a bunch of appraisals in those areas. I've never done an appraisal in that area. It doesn't matter because I'm using, you know, HAR, and I'm using what I've been taught, and I can go into an area. So, but I might not know something that's important. Now, I've had a real estate agent tell me schools, and I'll be like, that's fine. Most of the comparables are going to come from this neighborhood, so those are going to have the same schools.
They're going to have the same schools,
But if this area over here, and you know because of the school, people are actually trying to get in over here.
Yes.
The high school for Clemens, they're trying to get over here versus the high school for, you know, another school.
Right.
And you know that. That's something you might say, well, because of the schools, these comps over here, or these sales over here, in case I do have to go over here, are selling
You
for
would have
less
to make
because
you would make an adjustment then?
for location.
Okay.
So
Okay. Or is that something maybe that we can point out
you can point it out.
to the appraiser?
We can't see everything sometimes.
Yeah, I see.
You wanna
I
be
see.
able
Well,
to
that's really helpful
show
to know
things.
that. So things that we could point out would be like schools.
Not necessarily schools, but like if you know
Or values in
if
the
you know
area.
the comparable or a cell over here is possibly going to be used in the appraisal.
Yes.
If you do happen to go over here in this area or in this neighborhood
Okay.
or use these comps, they're zoned to a school, you know, and there's more demand over here for this school. And
Okay.
here's some data that show that homes are selling for more over here than over here. That's actually if you see that we've used the appraisal. Usually, you know, you might not know to go outside the comparable because you don't know that I'm going to have to go outside the subdivision to find a comparable because you know, there's not a lot of these size homes in this neighborhood. But location is more important. So if there's a little bit bigger size home, but it's in the same neighborhood and the same everything else, we're probably going to want to have that one in the report. We might go outside the subdivision to bracket something, like you have a very large lot, but there's no other lots in your subdivision. But over here, there's a large lot that brackets the size, and that's because the underwriter's requiring us to have something in the report with that. We might not put a lot of value on it.
Right,
we might not say this,
things that we as realtors
this
would
doesn't
think
matter.
of,
This comparable's here, but it's not going to. It doesn't have a lot of effect on value because it's outside the neighborhood. These do. These are the comparables that do. We'll say that in the report.
Yes. Yeah. And that is one thing I do explain to sellers when I go and do a listing, help them choose a listing price. I mean, the seller has to decide, what it is. I've got to give them all the facts. But also my knowledge in understanding that what will happen if they list it above price, even if somebody offers that if they're coming in with a loan, that there's going to be other hurdles, and one of those hurdles is the appraisal.
Yeah, there's
that has to be considered.
Yeah, there's been times when I've heard real estate agents say, I'm not going to take that one because I know it's not going to appraise. I wouldn't do that in this market.
You mean a listing? They wouldn't take a listing?
They wouldn't accept an offer.
Oh, accept an offer, okay.
Way out,
Okay, yeah,
because that's a technique. They'll make a high offer and then it won't appraise.
Right, and then they want to
they're going to come back.
The buyer wants to come back less.
And also the difference between FHA and conventional is an FHA appraisal sticks with the property for 6 months.
Okay.
So once you get that FHA appraisal on that property, it's there for 6 months. Versus conventional, you go somewhere else to do a loan.
And they're not going to look at that other one.
Another appraisal, another opinion.
Okay.
When
you say it sticks, it means it's recorded somewhere where all the FHA appraisers or everybody who's appraising that property has to look at.
For that property, no, we don't look at it, but for that property address, an appraisal is assigned.
Okay.
And they'll know.
Okay.
So.
And that's with FHA. Okay, so, but it's different with conventional.
Right.
You're saying. Well, that is really good news. I mean, it's good information to understand because it does affect, in different markets, what kind of offers people want to make and what kind of offers sellers want to accept. Well, thank you so much for your time. Oh my gosh, we've got so much information here. So Rigo, thanks again.
Thank you.
All right.